Chapter 13. Bats! George and Bert continued to argue with the river police, but to no avail. Finally, George said, "The boat our friends are in is being rented by the hour. Please, can't we return it before going to headquarters?" The chief officer consented. "Thank you," said George. She hoped that by contacting the man from whom they had rented the boat, the group of young people would be exonerated. Her hopes were in vain, although the man did identify them as the group who had rented one of his boats. He said he had no idea where they were going. For all he knew, they might have rented his boat to steal the other one. Ned paid him for the use of the water witch. Then he, Nancy, Bess, and Dave climbed aboard the officer's launch. It proceeded to the police dock. Here, the 6 friends were ushered into a building which was a branch of the main police headquarters. All of them were questioned. Finally, Nancy said, "I'm the Nancy Drew whose car was stolen." "Yes, we know," the officer in charge said. "It hasn't been found yet." "Now that you know who we are, and that we're not boat thieves, may we please go?" "Not yet. You haven't proved that you didn't take the boat we found 2 of you in." "We have no proof," Nancy replied. "But also, you have no proof we stole the boat." The officer looked searchingly at her. "You sound like a lawyer." "Probably I've learned that from my father. He's Carson Drew of River Heights, an attorney." Suddenly, the officer's face broke into a wide grin. "Carson Drew? Everybody knows him. So you're his daughter. Why didn't you tell the river police that in the first place?" Nancy did not answer. She merely smiled, and the officer said with a wink, "Case dismissed." When the young people reached the sidewalk outside, Dave came alongside Nancy and rubbed his arm against hers. "Boy, am I glad to be a friend of such a famous person." Everyone laughed, and the gay mood of the group was restored. When they sobered again, George said, "That fellow who tried to ram us must have stolen the boat just for that reason." "I wonder who he is," Bess mused. The following morning, Nancy and her friends went to church, then drove in Ned's car to the castle. As they went down the tree-shaded lane, Nancy and George were delighted to discover that the drawbridge was still down. Even the stones they had heaped on it were in place. "Just the same, I'm going to leave my car on this side," said Ned. Bert chuckled. "Now we won't have to use those swim trunks we brought." "And I was planning on being a gallant knight and letting the drawbridge down for miladies to cross," said Dave. Nancy and George grinned and showed how they had anchored the bridge so it could not be raised from inside the castle. "Clever," said Ned. The visitors hurried across and walked into the cobblestone courtyard, which was filled with tufts of grass and weeds that even grew through cracks in the porticos. Nancy and Ned decided to start their search at the tower end of the castle. They found that on the first floor, directly below the tower, was a mammoth baronial hall. There was nothing in it but a collection of many years of dust and cobwebs. "This must have been gorgeous," said George, as she and Bert joined the others in the great room. In order not to miss finding anyone who might be hiding out in the castle, the young people separated into 3 pairs, each taking a section. They walked through room after room, some of which opened off adjoining suites, and others only off the porticos. Finally, the 6 friends met back in the great hall. "Did you find anything?" each excitedly asked the other, but none of them had. George added, "No cot, stove, food, or clothing to indicate anyone is living here." The searchers had noticed 3 stairways leading to the floor above, a wide one from the baronial hall, and 2 narrow ones in other sections. Each couple took one of them to the second floor. Here they found a series of rooms, some with doors, many with them missing. I presume lots of things have been stolen from here by souvenir hunters and vandals, Nancy surmised. I'm afraid so, said Ned. It's a shame this beautiful place is being allowed to go to ruin. When the other two couples joined them, George reported that she and Bert had come upon a locked door. They did not know whether it opened into a room or possibly to a stairway leading to the tower. Nancy was excited. Maybe someone is living in the tower, she suggested. Our whiskered friend. George led the way to the heavy oak door. There was a wooden slide bolt on it, but this was open. Still the door would not give. Ned and Bert took hold of the enormous knob on it and gave a tremendous heave. This time the door opened, but the young people fell back in dismay from a dark stairway ahead of them. They were about to be attacked by a flock of bats. The group took to their heels. Nancy, at the end of the line, kept pace with Ned. Presently she turned around to see what had become of the bats. To her amazement, she saw a man come from the tower stairway and run down the hall in the opposite direction. "Ned!" she cried, grabbing his arm and stopping short. "I saw the tower signaler. Let's chase him." She called to the rest of her friends to turn back and follow them, but they did not hear her. She and Ned started running down the hall after the man. As they turned a corner, Nancy saw him reach one of the smaller stairways and start downward. "Stop!" she cried. "We're not going to harm you. We just want to talk to you." The stranger paid no attention and disappeared. Nancy and Ned raced after him, but by the time they reached the first floor, he was out of sight. "We'd better separate if we hope to find him," said Nancy. "All right, but be careful," Ned agreed. The two hurried off in opposite directions. In a few moments, Nancy came to an open doorway. Before her was a circular, enclosed stairway leading to the cellar. The steps were of stone, but the walls were oak-paneled. That man must have gone down to the cellar, Nancy decided. This door wasn't open the first time we examined this floor. She glanced at the door. It matched the paneling of the hallway exactly, and at first glance might not have been noticed. Apparently the searchers had missed it. As Nancy listened, she was sure she heard a creaking noise below her. Was the bewhiskered man just reaching the cellar, or was he hiding someplace and causing a door to creak? At that moment, Ned joined her, and she pointed below. In a whisper, she said, "I think he's down there. Let's go." Ned laid a restraining hand on her arm. "Not you. I'll go." It was only then that Nancy realized how dark it was below. "You couldn't find your way," she said. Ned grinned. From his trouser pocket, he pulled a flashlight. "You've taught me this much about sleuthing. Never go on a search in dark places without a light. I'll go first. If everything's okay, you follow," he said. Ned went slowly down the winding stairway. Presently, he was out of sight. Nancy waited anxiously, hoping there would be no attack by the bewhiskered man or other persons. "Okay," he called up a moment later. "Come ahead." As Nancy started down, Ned began a search for the man. Suddenly he realized that Nancy was taking a very long time to descend the stairway. "Nancy," he called. "What's wrong?" There was no answer. Worried, Ned hurried up the stairway. Not only was Nancy not on it, but when he reached the first floor, he discovered that she was not in sight. Bess and George and the boys hurried toward him. Where's Nancy? They asked in one breath. "I don't know," Ned said fearfully, then told them where he had left her. "How long ago was that?" Bess asked quickly. "Why, just a few minutes." "Then she didn't come up the stairway, nor was she anywhere near it," said Bess. "Otherwise we would have seen her." The 5 young people looked at one another. Panic seized them. What had happened to Nancy? End of chapter 13.